Good morning, everybody. Hope you all are doing well today. I first and foremost want to mention welcome back from your 2 week spring break. I know this is not ideal circumstances by any stretch of the imagination with regards to COVID 19 as well as the quarantine. I first and foremost want to come in and say I hope you are doing well and staying safe for everything that's been going on. And I hope y'all are ready to get back to it, get to conversing about social media and adapting for what we're going to be doing for the next 5 weeks. So we've still got some time. We've still got a couple things that I really want to cover over. And this will kind of adjust into some basic tenets of how this class is going to be structured for the remainder of the semester. I will first say this is not going to be ideal. None of this is. But the big thing is that we adapt and move forward with the cards that we have right now. And again, if you are concerned or if you have questions, feel free to email me. Obviously, I'm home, so I'm happy to respond to anything that y'all want to talk about. The way I want to have this class structured for the remainder of the semester is I have some experience teaching online. So what I normally do on this is I usually record in the morning um, anywhere from 3 to 4 videos a week. So they usually last around, I'll say, about 15 to 30 minutes, depending on what the topic is, how much I get going, etc. And I want to be able to communicate this with y'all in terms of how we want to approach this class. Now, I've spoken to several of my students, not necessarily in this classes, but in other classes, that have mentioned that because of their new work schedule, because of COVID, they can't meet synchronously. Now, I am not opposed to meeting synchronously, but I think the biggest thing is we've got a major project that I'm going to be talking about that you see on your screen right now, here in a few minutes. And that's going to be the major facet for the rest of this class. The rest of this will be online lectures that I want to do asynchronously. So I will record them in the morning. You are free at your leisure to view them within the week. And I will be putting up forum posts for you to express your opinions about some of the topic areas that come up. I just want to get us in the rhythm of it this week, but next week I will be posting some As You Learn posts, with regards to forums and how you feel about certain issues within social media strategies. So, again, want to be really productive, want to keep things going as much as possible. But that's the best way I think I can really look into doing this. I want, again, do this asynchronously, communicate post about, like I said, 3 to 4 times a week. In addition to that, I'd like to propose doing online office hours on Friday at agreed upon times. So, but I'm thinking around somewhere around noon or 1 or something like that. So be on for an hour, have a Zoom meeting so everybody can join, and message me. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know your thoughts, concerns, anything I can answer, etc. I would greatly appreciate that. So that's what I'm looking at in having a little bit of asynchronous and synchronous communication. So let's, before we get into the social media plan for our final project, let's talk a little bit of the schematics here of some questions that I've gotten over spring break. First and foremost, I've gotten a question about the presentations about social media. Again, I'm not going to require the groups that haven't gone yet to give their presentations. I will be doing that information. So, as stated, if you've done your presentation, I will grade it accordingly. If you haven't, I will not count that against your grades. That's kind of where I'm sitting there. As far as the event is concerned, yes, we are not having it per May, but provided things move in a direction at least that we can get to a little bit of normalcy by August, I'd still like to move forward into um, having that ready just in case things start to turn in a more positive direction, that we can potentially advertise going into August. So I realize that some of that may be at the end of the semester, and if it is, it is. I will make sure that I do my part in terms of posting with that. But what that means is, um, I have been thinking about, since we um, put in money for the budget and we don't have much to post, and yeah, so what are we going to do with that for the money that you gave me for the budget? So I've been thinking of two things that I would love your opinions on. First and foremost is wait till August, use it for boosting purposes, um, and be able to advertise in that case, use it for anything with the event itself as we move forward for that day. So that's one thing we can do. The other thing is what we did last year, which was we didn't spend a lot of our budget at all, which I didn't think was necessarily that wise to do. And I only say that because for good business practices, if you have a budget, use it. um, but one thing that was I thought about with this is when we're talking about the budget in this case, and we're talking about what we want to do with it. Um, the one thing that kind of came up to our minds last year was let's just donate it to the Watauga Humane Society. And so, whether you want to use it for the event or actually just donate it, that is completely up to you. Um, but I think those would be two viable options that we're using this money for, either budgeting or doing some good in terms of giving the Watauga Humane Society some resources. So let me know what you think about that. I think that might be one of the smarter things to do in this particular scenario here. The last thing I'll mention is weekly I will be sending out an email about what you can expect for the rest of the week, whether it be this week, next week. I'll kind of give this is what I'm thinking for this week and just kind of move from there. So a lot of this will be a little contingency, but I do want to keep things moving as much as possible. So just keep an eye out on there. So, okay, that is enough for my 8 minutes of announcements. Apologies about that. Let's talk a little bit about our social media plan. So as you see here, due May 1st by noon, submitted to As You Learn. I'll put up a Dropbox closer to time, probably sometime mid-April. I'll have a Dropbox that you can submit it to. What I want everybody to do is, as you see here, assignment involves a real-life organization and 7 to 10 research proposal / paper for the organization social media plan. New double space, 12-point font times New Roman. Keep it APA style in this case. The thing that I want us to think about with this is you are going to be creating a social media plan. And this is a really good thing to be able to kind of get in the practice of doing, as I'm actually doing this myself with another organization while we're in kind of COVID. I'm lending out my consulting services within social media strategies. So being able to write a plan like this is very good for a lot of organizations that may not have one, or you want to improve upon one. So what I normally recommend people for when I do these kinds of classes online is I'll say find a local organization that really speaks to you, one that you might have a lot of experience with or you may work for, or choose a national client that you think needs some help, that you don't think that has a very strong social media presence, and you really could see yourself putting in some ideas that would make a benefit towards them through your own ideas. So this is just kind of a good way to get kind of started in terms of writing a portfolio. And so they need to be real clients. I would prefer them to be for-profit organizations. And the main reason I say that is when you get into nonprofit, sometimes doing a little bit of the sometimes doing a little bit of the competitive nature in terms of understanding who your competition are, as you see on section 8 here, can be a little bit fuzzy when it comes to nonprofit. So I had a student that did something within App State, and she's like, I don't know who my competitors were. And she was right. There really wasn't much of one to be able to use here. And so obviously this will be a case by case basis, and we can kind of address that as it comes to. But the main thing that I want everybody to know is, as you're completing this, as you're doing this, as you're thinking about your client, I prefer a nonprofit, or at least, or excuse me, I prefer a for-profit or at least a national nonprofit. So it's clear that there is some competition to go there. Now, if you'd like, we can have an opportunity to interview people as a form of primary research. I'm not going to require it, considering the time that's being that we have, because we don't have that much. But if you'd like to, that may be a good thing to be able to talk about within some of the people that are within your work, especially if you're doing a small business. To be able to interview said person and talk to them a little bit may go a long way. So you see some of the components here. Cover page is pretty self-explanatory. Introduction talks a little bit about plan of the employees, other stakeholders, and what this will do as far as why we need to take this social media seriously. What is it about social media here that needs to be considered when we're getting into a little bit of the severity of why this is important and why do we need this. So this has come up one or two times with some of my students, is that some students will be like, I'm in Shelby, North Carolina, and there's a lot, the demographic just doesn't have that much for social media. And while I understood that, there were some areas that I wanted to still kind of explore why this was really important here. But talking in terms of who works there, some of your customers, stockholders, anybody that's involved within the organization will look at this. When we get into acknowledgments, you'll see signatures for those who created will implement the plan. That's you. I just want to make this look official. I'm all about a little bit of pomp and circumstance when it comes to writing these. So making sure that you are considering yourself the social media director. And again, you can see what we're dealing with here. This is a 1-year plan. Give me your start and finish dates and why you chose to pick those dates to begin with and finish. So the reason for this is I want to make a year-long plan, and I want you to think about how you're going to utilize your social media given that plan. Now, the reason I put into your start and finish date is because every organization, whether it be a national or a local campaign, should consider when they're starting their campaign and when they're finishing it, and picking the month, I will say, that suits them best. So normally when we do these kind of campaigns, what we'll notice is that the client will pick them for us and say, okay, we want you to start in January as a part of the fiscal year, or maybe I'm a back to school purveyor that said, let's start in July as kind of the back to school season starts. Maybe one of the ones that we looked at for the National Student Advertising Competition, I said, let's start in August because it's right before Oktoberfest, and this was a brand that very easily could have involved Oktoberfest, and as that starts in September. So yes, Oktoberfest starts in September, so a little odd, but that is something to let you know about. It does finish in October, so we'll leave it at that. Anyway, so think about what your day is and why you're going to pick it. Why does this make sense for your brand in particular? So purpose and objectives. This is probably going to be one of your strongest spots within the foundation for why you're doing this in the first place. Your purpose and the goals of the company, which should include your mission statement. So you can even copy paste the mission statement from the organization that you're using if they have one. What are the goals that they're trying to do? This may also be included within the mission statement. But what are they trying to do? And a lot of this is increased followers, brand recognition, brand awareness, brand recall. All these can be variables in terms of what is the purpose of this company as it stands. Because if you're a brand new company, maybe the idea is I want to make sure that I get my brand out there so that people know what it is. But there might be some other areas in terms of maybe I want to look into, I'm in a well-established brand, so I'm looking for engagement rate, for instance. So on Twitter, I've noticed that there's a lot of impressions. I'm seeing a lot of people that see my work. However, the thing that's kind of the kicker here is that I don't have a lot of people that are responding to it. So liking, retweeting, etc., clicking on the links, whatever. And I can't see that. So this is an area where being able to explain the goals of the company, as well as understand what we're trying to do, depending on whether we're a new or established business might come into it, or national or local, etc. This should go into your SMART plan, which I will want you to write for the purpose and objectives, and you can be as detailed as possible with this. Recently, like I said, I was doing one for an organization, writing up a SMART plan, and I had 7 bullet points per each area, and addressing every single one of them, in not copious detail, but enough where I was saying, all right, this is what we're looking at. I wanted anywhere from 100 to 150,000 impressions per month. I wanted at around a 2.5% engagement rate. So I was very specific about what I was looking for. I was looking at about 20 followers increase per month, as well as understanding some of our stakeholders, which was another organization entirely that wanted to partner with the one that I'm working for. And so these are kind of things that we should be thinking about within our SMART plan. Now, if you ever needed a reminder of this, ever need to look at it, just keep an eye out. And we can talk about SMART plans on like Friday, but that's kind of what I'm thinking here. So we can kind of see what we're dealing with in terms of purpose and objectives. Secondary research, this is the thing that I want you to do for research here. I recognize that primary research might be a little out of reach, particularly with only 5 weeks, and especially with COVID being what it is, and being quarantined and being able to talk to people might be a little difficult. So I'm not going to put a strong emphasis on primary research unless you want to. Now remember, the difference between primary and secondary research is primary will actually be talking to the people that are your subjects and participants within the study that you're doing, whereas secondary is going to be taking pre-existing data that's already out there for you to use. So this is a sweep of the social media that's been done. So I would recommend looking through your big hitters of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, maybe some non-big hitters if their brand is on things like Reddit, Tumblr, Imager, whatever it may be. If there's a big presence on any of those, and it can be some lesser known. So like we found, we're looking at another organization for our advertising competition and noticed that they had a podcast that we wanted to use. That was something we weren't aware of at the time, but it was good for secondary research here. Hold on one second. Sorry, I had to get a little drink real quick. The other thing that we're going to look at is, so like I said, have a synopsis of what you see. This doesn't have to be quantitative by any means, but let me know what the themes are. What are people saying? Is this a well-liked brand? Is this something that that they're posting frequently and they have good content? Is it being responded to well? Normally you would do some edge ranks on this kind of thing in terms of understanding not only the reactions but the decay between reactions, etc. So that's where secondary research comes in. SWOT analysis, based on this research that you've been doing and your purpose of objectives, what is the SWOT per your social media? And keep that specific. That's all I want. I don't want anything as far as some of their business objectives other than what it is about their social media that is a strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. Easy way to see this, though, is understanding a little bit about your strengths and weaknesses within your own company, and then the opportunities and threats on things outside of it. Now, normally, well, actually, for this project, I want you to kind of think of things a little bit outside of COVID. So, think of kind of all things are we're not dealing with this pandemic right now. Um, we're dealing with this as if it was just a normal Monday morning, So don't hold back in terms of what you want to do for the post at this point. And you can even say, like, I want to start the date at, I don't know, January of 2021 to, make sure that we're potentially in a position where, we're not going to be in the same area of quarantine as we were. I don't know if that will be the case. And I'm not going to make an assumption one way or the other, but just something to think about here. So strength, weakness, opportunity, threats based on strengths and weaknesses within your own company, and then opportunities and threats within outside stakeholders as well as competitors. So a lot of these have to do with things that you don't have a lot of control of, but you can still see yourself within opportunities and threats. Threats being your competition. List three primary competitors and explain their rules. One thing that I like to do is I like to look at media share. So I'll comb through overall likes, something really easy. Overall likes between Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And I compare between the competition and myself and say, where do I fall within this media mix? And, understand that, okay, maybe I've got a pretty decent presence on Facebook, but I'm seeing that my other competitor is blowing me out of the water in terms of posts, in terms of in terms of content. But oddly enough, I'm doing really well on Twitter, and not many people are spending much money. So this would be normally where I would say, let's keep posting on Facebook, but not put a lot of emphasis on it. Let's focus more on something like Twitter would be a good start to do. Buyer personas, listing 3 specific prototypes. I'll go over a lecture on this tomorrow of what a buyer persona looks like, because a lot of people kind of get this wrong. This is a prototype of a person. And so that includes who this person is, why they would be a buyer, what is it specifically about their lifestyle that would work here. PR CSR, I always like looking at these kind of initiatives in terms of how you will engage in civic engagement. This is another reason why I like to work with for-profits for this project, is that you can look at non-government associations or organizations, as they're otherwise called, NGOs, and what kind of PR can you promote, and what kind of nonprofits can you work with in this case. Brief synopsis of a crisis plan in terms of what your organization would do in the midst of a specific crisis. Kind of keep it specific to your brand in particular. So, I teach crisis communication in the summer, and one of the things that we'll notice is that every single one of these crises with local businesses that we do have different problems. And so one of them was this consideration for what happens if there is a party that goes awry, and we have to resolve this and respond to it quickly, versus another one we did for a restaurant here local in Boone, and said, what if there's a contamination problem where a lot of people get sick? These are things that we don't want to happen, but these are the kind of things that we would look at, what our organization would say, what platform would we use, etc. So making sure that you've got a crisis plan for your organization specifically, and what are some of the problems that can specifically arise within your organization specifically. And so the big thing is, with all this, what is your overall big idea or slogan for this campaign? Based on your research, explain the tone and explain how you make your regular posts. So we've talked about this in class before, of what is the tone for these organizations. I like to look at Reese's, for example, that they have the Sorry Not Sorry campaign. I don't know if it's still going on, but they've done it for a little while now. And this is kind of a carefree attitude. It's kind of an attitude that they're going to kind of do their thing, and it's an interesting, salty kind of way of doing things, much like the Wendy's approach, but in their own spin on it. And so a lot of this will be based on, especially on your SWOT that you're going to be talking about how you plan to develop key messages. And we can talk more about that as we go along. And then the last thing, because I know we're getting around 30 minutes and I don't want to, spend too much time. The evaluation is how will this plan help your business more than the current plan does? So make sure to cite your work to back up your claims. I will be posting throughout the week some articles about social media. Keep reading on the list that I gave you for social media reading, because that's going to be very beneficial in this case. Like I said, my goal this week is to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of doing this social media plan, because we've got a little over a month to do it. And then kind of as we go along, I want to be able to have some informative stuff, kind of keep the schedule, but I also want to do some fun stuff and talk about some fun stuff as we progress throughout the rest of the semester. So anyway, if you have questions, please email me. I'm going to write an email right after I'm done putting this video to YouTube. But the one thing I'll mention is, like I said, I'm thinking about doing a Zoom meeting on Friday if that works for y'all, and we'll kind of look into a time that works best as well. So keep in touch. Y'all be safe. And like I said, email me if you have any questions. All right. Take care.